The morning sun was soft and golden, spilling through the streets of Delhi like a warm blessing. People moved with their usual hurry, buses roared past, and vendors shouted prices for fruits and tea. Among the crowd, a tall man with a gentle face walked quietly, his hands full with two heavy bags. The straps of the bags were digging into his shoulders, and he kept adjusting them, but still, the weight seemed too much. The man was Narendra Modi, but this was not the Modi most people knew from television. Here, in this moment, he looked like any other man simply trying to carry a load from one place to another. His clothes were simple, and the morning dust clung to the hems of his pants. The books inside the bags were thick and many, some worn with age, some still wrapped in fresh brown paper. He had borrowed them from a small library across town, books about leadership, history, and the lives of people who had changed the world with quiet acts. The library had no delivery service, and Modi believed in doing his own work. He had insisted on carrying them himself, even when the librarian offered help. As he walked slowly through the crowded market street, his steps grew heavier. Each few minutes, he would stop, place the bags on the ground, and rub his shoulders. The people around him passed without looking. Life in the city often leaves no time for strangers' troubles. A small boy selling balloons ran past, almost tripping over one of the bags. But even he did not notice the man's struggle. It was then, near the corner of a tea stall, that another figure stepped into the scene. A tall, thin man in a plain shirt, his eyes kind yet sharp, watched Modi for a moment. He had been waiting for his tea when he noticed the heavy bags and the way Modi's hands trembled slightly from the weight. This man was Sundar Pichai. He had returned to India quietly for a few days, visiting his old neighborhood before heading back abroad. Sundar had no intention of being recognized. He liked walking the streets like any other person, feeling the life and energy of the place that had shaped him. But in that instant, he felt a pull. He could not simply stand there and watch. He walked up and said in a calm, respectful voice, "Sir, those bags seem heavy. May I help you carry them?" Modi looked up, a little surprised. In his eyes, this was just a stranger offering help, not one of the most known figures in the tech world. No, it's fine," Modi replied, softly, though his voice carried the weight of tiredness. "I can manage." Sundar smiled. "I can see you can manage, but you don't have to do it alone." There was something in his tone simple, genuine that made Modi pause. After a moment of hesitation, he nodded slowly. "All right, if you don't mind, you can take one." Sundar lifted the bag with ease, though he quickly realized it was heavier than it looked. "What's in here, bricks?" he asked lightly, making Modi chuckle for the first time that morning. "No," Modi replied. "These are books. Every one of them matters." As they walked together, Sundar noticed the way Modi held the other bag, still refusing to hand it over entirely. There was pride there, but not arrogance, just a belief in carrying his own share. "Why so many books at once?" Sundar asked. Modi answered with a small smile, "Because every book is a voice from another time, another place. And when you need answers, you listen to as many voices as you can." The street began to clear a little as they turned toward a quieter lane. Sundar felt a strange warmth in this simple act, two men walking side by side, one helping the other. No cameras, no speeches, no headlines. But just as the moment felt peaceful, a sudden sound broke the air. A group of young men on motorcycles sped past, one of them swinging his arm dangerously close to the bags. The jolt almost made Modi drop his load. Sundar reacted instantly, steadying the bag in Modi's hand and pulling him slightly to the side. "Are you all right?" Sundar asked quickly. Modi nodded, but there was a hint of frustration in his eyes, not because of the danger, but because it reminded him how the world often rushes past, careless of those who walk a little slower. They continued walking, and as they reached a narrow alley, Sundar noticed something unusual. A small handwritten sign on a wall read, "Free evening classes here." Children peeked from the doorway, curious about the two men passing by. Modi slowed his pace, his eyes lingering on the scene. Sundar could feel the air change, as if this small encounter was going to lead to something much bigger than either of them expected. And in that quiet, dusty lane, with books in their hands and unspoken questions between them, the real story was only beginning. The children at the doorway stared with wide eyes, their clothes a little worn, their feet dusty from playing in the street. Some clutched notebooks so thin the wind could have blown them away. A woman in a faded green sari stood just inside the doorway, watching cautiously. Sundar slowed down without thinking, his eyes fixed on the sign and the children's faces. Modi noticed it too and stopped walking. "Free evening classes," Modi read softly, almost to himself. "Someone here is trying to make a difference." The woman stepped forward, wiping her hands on the edge of her sari. "Namaste," she said gently, her voice both welcoming and careful. "Can I help you?" Modi gave a small smile. "We were just passing by. I saw your sign. You run this place?" She nodded. "Yes. My name is Kavita. I teach the children from the neighborhood. Many of them cannot go to school every day. Their parents work long hours. Some have no parents at all." Her voice faltered slightly, but she steadied herself. "We do what we can here." Sundar glanced inside the dim room behind her. A few wooden benches lined the walls. A small blackboard leaned on one corner, and stacks of old books lay in a neat pile. The air was warm and smelled faintly of chalk and dust. There was no fan, only the slow movement of a hand-woven curtain in the doorway. "How many students?" Sundar asked. "Sometimes 20, sometimes 30, Kavita replied. "It depends on who can come after working or helping their families." Modi adjusted the bag on his shoulder. "These books," he said slowly, "they offer my own learning, but maybe some can be shared." Sundar felt something shift in the air. "Yes," he said quickly, "and maybe we can bring more, better books, maybe even some computers." Kavita gave a small laugh, not from humor, but from disbelief. "Computers, here, sir? We don't even have enough chairs for the children." "Then we start with chairs," Sundar said without hesitation. His tone was calm, but there was steel in his promise. The children began to whisper among themselves, curious about these two strangers. One little boy with bright eyes stepped forward and pointed to the bags. "Are those books for us?" Modi crouched down so he was eye level with the boy. "Today, no, but soon, yes, I promise." The boy's smile was shy but full of trust. As they left the small center, Sundar felt a heaviness in his chest, not from the bag he carried, but from the weight of what he had seen. He knew he had the means to help, but something about this moment told him it wasn't just about giving money or supplies. It was about building something that could last. Modi walked quietly beside him, his mind clearly deep in thought. After a few steps, he spoke. "You saw what I saw." "Yes," Sundar replied. "Then we can't ignore it," Modi said firmly. "When life shows you a door like that, you either walk past it or you step through. I am stepping through." Sundar's lips curved into a small smile. "And I'll step with you." The road ahead was quiet, but both men knew something had changed. They no longer carried just books. They carried the beginning of an idea, one that neither of them could yet see fully, but one that felt alive in their hands. They didn't know it yet, but what started as a chance meeting over two heavy bags was about to grow into something that would draw attention from far beyond that little street in Delhi. The next morning, Sundar woke early, the image of the children still fresh in his mind. The small room, with its cracked walls and worn benches, had stayed with him through the night. He sat by the window of his hotel, sipping tea and watching the city stir awake. He thought about the quiet determination in Modi's voice when he had said, "I am stepping through." Later that day, Sundar called Modi. Are you free this evening? He asked. Free for what? Modi's tone was calm but curious. To go back, Sundar replied simply. To see that place again. I have some ideas. There was a pause, then a soft laugh from Modi. I was thinking the same thing. By late afternoon, they were walking toward the narrow lane again, this time carrying lighter bags but heavier intentions. Sundar had brought his small tablet, a notebook, and a pen. Modi carried a bundle of newspapers, not for reading, but for wrapping books to donate. When they reached the doorway, Kavita was inside, teaching a small group of children. She looked up, surprised to see them back so soon. You returned, she said, smiling faintly. We said we would. Modi replied. The children's eyes lit up. One boy whispered to another, and soon a ripple of excitement moved through the room. Sundar stepped forward. We wanted to know more. How do you run this place? Where do you get your materials? What do you need the most? Kavita hesitated. Sir, we manage with what little we have. Sometimes neighbors donate books. Sometimes people give a little money for chalk and notebooks. We never have enough, but we do not stop. These children need a place to learn. Even if it is small, even if it is hot, we keep going. Her words carried no self-pity, only quiet strength. Modi placed the wrapped books on the teacher's desk. These are for your library. They are not perfect, but they will help. One little girl reached out to touch the stack, as if confirming they were real. Sundar opened his notebook. I want to help you, he said, but not just today. I want to make this a place where children can dream bigger. Maybe new benches, a ceiling fan, better lights, and in time, maybe a computer or two. Kavita's eyes softened, but she shook her head slightly. I have heard promises before. People come, they speak of big plans, then they disappear. Then let us be different, Modi said firmly. Something in his voice made the room fall silent. Even the children seemed to sense the importance of that moment. They spent the next hour asking questions, listening more than speaking. They learned that some children came without breakfast, that some worked in tea stalls before arriving for class. Sundar wrote everything down carefully. When it was time to leave, the sun was setting, casting a warm orange glow across the street. As they stepped outside, Sundar turned to Modi. This cannot be just a donation. It has to be a commitment. If we do this, we do it fully. Modi nodded. And we start now. They didn't know yet what shape their plan would take, but they both felt the same pull. They had seen something they could not unsee. And somewhere deep inside, they knew that this simple learning center was about to change, not just for the children, but for everyone who touched it. 2 days later, Modi and Sundar met again, this time in a small cafe, away from the noise of the city. The air smelled of fresh chai and cardamom, and the hum of quiet conversation surrounded them. Sundar had a folder on the table, filled with notes, sketches, and ideas from their visit to the learning center. Modi had brought a small cloth bag, but instead of books, it carried a few handwritten letters from people in the neighborhood who had heard about their interest in the center. I asked a few of the parents to write about what this place means to them, Modi said, sliding the letters towards Sundar. Some of them can't write well, so they had others help. But the feelings are real. Sundar opened the first letter and read silently. It spoke of a mother who worked cleaning homes from dawn to dusk, but who sent her daughter to Kavita evening classes because it was the only chance for her to learn. Another letter was from a boy of 14 who had dropped out of school to work in a mechanic shop but still attended the center twice a week to practice reading. By the time Sundar read the last letter, his jaw was tight. This isn't just about education, he said quietly. This is about giving them a sense that they matter, that someone cares enough to see them. Modi leaned back, his expression thoughtful, and if we can give them that, even in a small way, it can change how they see the world, and how the world sees them. They began to plan in detail. First, they would improve the basics: sturdy benches, proper lighting, a fan for the hot summer days. Then they would add a small library corner, filled with books for different ages and reading levels. Finally, they would look at bringing in a computer, not just for typing, but for showing the children how wide the world could be beyond their street. And we must do this quietly, Modi said firmly. No publicity, no speeches. The focus should be on them, not on us. Sundar nodded in agreement. Acts of kindness are not for headlines, they are for hearts. That evening they visited a carpenter who agreed to make benches at a reduced price. Sundar also called a contact who could donate used but working ceiling fans. Modi reached out to a friend who had a small bookshop and asked for discounted children's books. Each step felt small, but each step was a piece of the bigger picture. Next week, they returned to the learning center. Kavita was surprised to see them again and even more surprised when two carpenters followed behind, carrying wood and tools. The children watched from the doorway as new benches began to take shape right before their eyes. "Why are you doing this?" Kavita asked softly, almost to herself. Modi smiled. "Because someone once did the same for us. Maybe not with benches or books, but with belief. And belief is a gift you pass forward." The sound of hammering filled the small room, mixing with the children's laughter. For the first time in a long while, the air inside the center felt lighter, as if hope itself had found a seat among them. Over the next few weeks, the changes in the learning center began to show. The benches stood firm and smooth, the ceiling fans hummed softly, and the warm glow of new lights filled the room during evening classes. The children no longer had to crowd into one corner. Each one had a seat of their own. Their laughter seemed louder now, their eyes brighter. One evening, as the children settled into their new benches, Sundar arrived carrying a large cardboard box. The kids looked at it with curiosity, whispering to each other. Kavita approached, wiping chalk dust from her hands. "What's this?" she asked. Sundar smiled. A surprise. He opened the box, revealing a stack of colorful book stories of adventure, science, and history, each with bright illustrations. The children gasped, some rushing forward to touch the covers. A little girl traced the picture of a ship on one book with her finger, as if it were something magical. Modi entered just in time to see the excitement. He watched the children flip through pages, their voices full of wonder. "Books are like doors," he said softly. "Every one of these will open a new place in your mind." Over the next days, they added more small things: a notice board for the children's drawings, a globe to teach them about the world, even a simple map of India on the wall. It wasn't just a classroom anymore. It was becoming a space where dreams could take root. But even as things improved, Sundar and Modi knew their work wasn't done. One evening, after the children had left, they sat with Kavita in the now quiet room. "What's your biggest challenge now?" Sundar asked. Kavya hesitated, then spoke. "Attendance. Some children want to come every day, but they can't. Their parents need them to work, or there's no one to watch their younger siblings. Sometimes hunger keeps them away. I can teach them, but I can't feed them." The weight of her words hung in the air. Modi's brows furrowed. "Then we make sure they eat, even if it's just something simple." Within a week, they arranged, with a local food stall, to provide evening snacks for the children: fruit, milk, and sometimes a small plate of rice. It was not much, but it was enough to bring more children back regularly. Slowly, the center became more than a classroom. It was a place where children felt safe, where they were listened to, where a full stomach and a kind word gave them energy to keep learning. One night, as Sundar was leaving, a boy tugged at his sleeve. "Sir," the boy said, holding up a notebook, "I wrote a story. Can you read it?" Sundar crouched down, took the notebook, and read aloud a simple but powerful tale about a farmer who shared his harvest with the whole village. When he finished, the boy beamed. "I wrote it because You and Sir Modi are like that farmer. Sundar was quiet for a moment. Then he placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and said, "Then one day, you will be that farmer too." Months passed, and the learning center no longer looked like the dim, crowded room they had first seen. The benches were filled with children every evening, the fans kept the air cool, and the walls were alive with color maps, drawings, and poems written by the students. The small library had grown, and the evening meals were now a regular comfort. But what truly changed was not the furniture, or the food it was the children themselves. They walked in with more confidence, they spoke with clearer voices, and they dared to dream about futures that once felt too far away. One evening, Kavita called Sundar and Modi aside. "There's something you should see," she said with a smile. She handed them a stack of papers, neatly written essays from the older children. Each one was about what they wanted to be when they grew up. One boy wrote about becoming a teacher, so he could give to others what Kavita had given him. Another wanted to be an engineer, to build things that make life easier for people. A girl wrote that she wanted to start a free clinic in her neighborhood. Modi read each essay slowly, his eyes soft. "Do you see what this is, Sundar?" he asked. "Yes," Sundar replied, his voice steady. "This is hope, written on paper." Word of the changes in the center began to spread quietly through the neighborhood. More parents encouraged their children to attend. A few even offered to help with cleaning, cooking, or tutoring the younger kids. It was becoming a community effort, and that made it stronger than any donation alone could have done. One afternoon, Sundar had to leave for a trip abroad. Before he went, he visited the center one last time. As he stepped into the classroom, the children stood up and greeted him in unison, their voices filling the air with warmth. A little boy ran up and handed him a drawing. It showed two men carrying heavy bags, with children standing around them, smiling. Under it, in uneven handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for carrying more than books." Sundar's throat tightened. He folded the paper carefully and placed it in his pocket. When he stepped outside, Modi was waiting. Together, they walked down the narrow lane that had started it all. "You know," Modi said quietly, "we didn't just help them, they helped us too. They reminded us of what matters." Sundar nodded. "Yes. Sometimes you think you're lifting someone else's burden, but in the process, they lift something inside you." The street was the same as before, busy, dusty, alive with sounds, but for them, it now held a different meaning. It was the place where two strangers had stopped for a moment, shared the weight of some books, and unknowingly begun a journey that would change many lives. A full year had passed since that first morning when Sundar had seen Modi struggling with the bags of books. The seasons had changed, and so had the little learning center in the narrow lane. It now had 2 rooms, instead of 1, freshly painted, walls and shelves lined with books of every size. A single second-hand computer sat in the corner, where children took turns learning how to type, search for information, and even draw digital pictures. The changes were visible, but the true transformation was in the people. The children walked taller, their voices stronger, their dreams clearer. Some had begun helping the younger ones with reading and maths, becoming little teachers themselves. On the anniversary of their first visit, Kavita invited Sundar and Modi to the center for a small gathering. The children had decorated the room with paper flowers and banners they had made themselves. One banner read, in big hand-painted letters, "Thank you for believing in us." When Sundar and Modi entered, the children clapped and cheered. Kavita stood at the front of the room, her eyes shining. "Today," she said, "is not just about saying thank you. It is about showing you what your kindness has done." One by one, the children came forward to share what they had learned and what they wanted to become. A boy who once could barely read now recited a full poem by heart. A shy girl who used to sit silently in the corner now stood confidently and spoke about wanting to be a doctor. Modi listened carefully to each child, his expression soft but full of pride. Sundar smiled quietly, his mind returning to that first meeting, two men carrying books through a busy street, unaware that the real journey was just beginning. After the children had finished, Kavita turned to Sundar and Modi. "There is one more thing," she said. She walked to the small table in the corner and lifted a covered tray. Under it were two handmade clay models, each showing a man carrying a heavy bag of books. "The children made these," Kavita said, "to remind them and all of us that kindness is never too heavy to carry." Sundar and Modi accepted the small gifts, holding them with care. The room was filled with smiles, but also with a quiet understanding. This was not charity. This was a bond. When the evening ended and the last child had gone home, Sundar and Modi stood outside the center, looking back at the glowing windows. "Funny," Sundar said, "how one small moment can change the course of so many lives." "Yes," Modi replied, "and it started because you stopped to help carry something that wasn't yours." Sundar smiled. "Sometimes, that's all it takes." As they walked away, the sound of children's laughter drifted through the night air. The learning center would keep growing, the children would keep learning, and the seed of kindness planted that day would keep spreading long after they were gone.